Stolen identity.
The Iwi were master weavers and spiritual architects. Ripped from their homes, they did not forget. Their Vodun united the enslaved to fight. The Iwi were master weavers.
Who did they steal?
From the Bight of Benin.
Modern day.
Togo, Benin, southwest Nigeria. Primary ethnic groups stolen were the Fon, the Yu, and the Yoruba. They made up 16% of the slave trade. The Ewe people lived, and still live, predominantly in the coastal and inland regions of what is now Togo and southeastern Ghana, often near the Volta River. Modern-day Togo and Ghana.
They organized themselves into fiercely independent, decentralized chiefdoms and fortified villages. They were decentralized and surrounded by highly militarized states locked in the gun-slave cycle. The Yu were frequently the primary targets of the transatlantic slave trade in the Bight of Benin. The gun-horse slave cycle.
Kingdoms were offered guns and horses in exchange for slaves only. If kingdoms did not sell their people, they received no weapons, making them vulnerable to the next kingdom. Those kingdoms were the ones ravaging other people in order to prevent themselves from being sold. Some kingdoms refused to offer up their people. Alada was established by the Asia people, who migrated from the settlement of Togo, in present-day Togo, near the Mano River. Alada was a major spiritual and political hub populated heavily by Asia and Ewe people. The kingdom operated as the Mother Kingdom, using a deeply intertwined system of ancestral lineage, religious authority, and economic control to govern the region. Political hub. Because Alada was established by the original Asia migrants from Togo, it was viewed as the genesis of regional royalty. The kings of neighboring states, including Wida on the coast and early Dahomey inland, were considered junior to the king of Alada. To be recognized as a legitimate ruler in the Bight of Benin, a king had to trace his lineage back to the royal house of Alada. Politically, Alada positioned itself as the mandatory middleman between the interior territories and European merchants. By strictly controlling the coastal ports and the trade routes flowing inland, Alada dictated foreign policy for the entire region. European powers, the Portuguese, Dutch, and French, had to send ambassadors directly to the king of Alada's court to negotiate treaties and trade terms. Spiritual hub. The spiritual system of the region, which would later be codified as Vodun by the Fon, was deeply tied to ancestor worship. Because Alada was the ancestral home of the region's royal lineages, the most powerful and ancient royal ancestors resided there spiritually. Therefore, the highest religious rites, sacrifices, and festivals had to be conducted or sanctioned by Alada's priesthood. The highest-ranking priests and diviners were trained and based in Alada. They served as the ultimate spiritual supreme court for the region. If there was a succession dispute, a severe drought, or a major war, the kings of Wida or Dahomey would consult the oracles and priests in Alada for spiritual guidance and intervention.
In 1724, King Agaja from the Kingdom of Dahomey raided and captured the Kingdom of Alada, effectively turning the tides on them, capturing and selling them into slavery. Many of Alada's priests, royals, and citizens were captured and sold into the transatlantic slave trade. This is a primary reason why the spiritual frameworks of the Fon, Yu, and Yoruba were able to survive the Middle Passage and powerfully re-emerge as Haitian Voodoo, Brazilian Candomblé, and Cuban Santeria. They were built on the resilient, engineered cultural foundation that Alada established.
The Yu were master weavers, lending their trade to other tribes and kingdoms surrounding them. Their specific weaving techniques and geometric patterns were so advanced that they heavily influenced neighboring empires. The famous, vibrant kente cloth, which is most widely associated today with the Akan Ashanti people of Ghana, has deep technological roots directly linked to Yu weavers. The science of Vodun. The Yu held a profound, complex cosmology that shared deep linguistic and theological roots with their Fon neighbors. The very concepts and deities that make up the Vodun religion were co-developed and synthesized by the Yu and the Fon over centuries of interaction. The Fon people did not just export captives, they exported a highly complex spiritual science. The word, Vodun, literally translates to spirit, or deity, in the Fon language. When the Yu and Fon were trafficked together to the French colony of Saint-Domingue, they brought this exact spiritual architecture with them. Their shared Vodun practices became Haitian voodoo. This religion was the crucial unifying force that allowed enslaved people from dozens of different African ethnic groups to communicate, organize, and launch the Haitian Revolution in 1791. Vodun is not the Hollywood caricature of voodoo dolls. It is a profound, monotheistic cosmology that believes in a single, unknowable creator, Mawu Lisa, who interacts with the physical world through a pantheon of lesser divine spirits, the Vodun. Fon and Ewe people in the kingdom of Dahomey, spiritual objects are highly complex. They did not make dolls to torture people. They created Boshio, translated loosely from the Fon language as empowered body, or medicine body. They were essentially spiritual lightning rods. A Boshio was created by a Vodun priest, a Bokano, to protect a family, heal an illness, or absorb malicious energy directed at the community. You did not stick pins into it to hurt your neighbor. You placed it at the entrance of your village or home to absorb incoming harm. The act of taking a doll made to look like a specific person, adding their hair or nail clippings, and sticking pins into it to cause them agony is a European practice known as sympathetic magic, specifically the use of puppets. The history. This practice dates back to ancient Greco-Roman colassois, curse tablets and figurines, and was heavily practiced in medieval Britain and France. During the European witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries, accused witches in England were frequently executed specifically for making wax or rag puppets and piercing them with pins to curse royalty or rivals. When British and French colonizers settled in North America and the Caribbean, they brought their superstitions, folklore, and puppet magic with them. European puppets.
The Haitian Revolution, the only successful slave rebellion in history that resulted in the founding of a sovereign nation, was initiated in 1791 by a voodoo ceremony at Bois Cayman.
The Yu belong to the ancient Niger-Congo expansions of West Africa. Their maternal lines, mtDNA, trace heavily to the L2 and L3 macro haplogroups, representing populations that successfully adapted to the West African forest savanna environment thousands of years ago. Their paternal lines, Y-DNA, predominantly carry the E1B1A marker. Because so many Ewe people were forced into the transatlantic trade, these genetic markers are foundational to the modern black populations of the Caribbean and the Americas today.
There is a pervasive historical myth that Africans arrived in the Americas uneducated.
The reality is that during the collapse of the Yoruba Oyo Empire in the early 1800s, many of the people captured and sent to Brazil were highly educated Islamic scholars, clerics, and teachers. The event, on the night of January 24, 1835, during the holy month of Ramadan, enslaved Africans launched the male revolt in the city of Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. The most incredible unsanitized fact about this revolt is that the leaders coordinated the entire uprising across the city by writing tactical battle plans, safe house locations, and religious verses in classical Arabic. The Portuguese enslavers were entirely oblivious because they literally could not read the complex, written language that their property was using to organize a military strike against them. In retaliation, police raided the homes of free and enslaved Africans, seizing hundreds of books, wooden writing tablets, and papers written in Arabic. These confiscated documents, which survived in the Bahian State Archives, are the primary source of the historical imagery available today. The government passed severe laws aimed specifically at African Muslims, banning Islamic practices, deporting free Africans suspected of involvement back to the Bight of Benin, specifically to cities like Lagos and Ouidah, and strictly criminalizing the possession of Arabic texts. July 3, 1825, French King Charles X sent a fleet of 14 warships heavily armed with 528 cannons to the harbor of Port-au-Prince. France delivered an ultimatum to Haitian President Jean-Pierre Boyer: face total military annihilation and re-enslavement, or pay France 150 million francs to compensate French planters for their lost property. That property referred directly to the bodies of the freed Fon, Yu, and Congolese citizens. Haiti was forced to take out predatory loans from French banks, like Crédit Industriel et Commercial, just to pay the extortion fee. It cost Haiti the modern equivalent of roughly $21 billion. The Haitian people did not finish paying off this debt until 1947. The extreme poverty associated with Haiti today is not an accident of geography or culture. It was mathematically engineered by this exact 1825 ordinance.
Both of these events prove that the civilizations taken from West Africa were highly advanced, deeply organized, and forced to pay an astronomical, literal price for their freedom.
So how did we get here? The Yu inhabited the coastal and inland regions between the Volta River, modern-day Ghana, and the Mano River, modern-day Togo. Smaller coastal kingdoms, such as Alada and Ouidah, acted as middlemen. They engaged in localized skirmishes with decentralized Yu and Asia villages, selling a steady but smaller stream of war captives to Dutch, Portuguese, and British ships anchored offshore. In 1724, during the fall of Alada, thousands of Yu, Asia citizens are captured, marched to the coast, and sold to European traffickers to fund Dahome's war machine. In 1727, Dahomey institutionalizes the enslavement process, building massive barracoons, slave pens, to hold Yu captives before loading them onto French and British vessels. During the Oyo tribute, to avoid paying this tribute with their own Fon citizens, Dahomean kings directed their elite military forces, including the female Mino, westward into Yu territory. Tens of thousands of Awe people were captured and fed into the transatlantic pipeline during this century. Once enslaved in Haiti, on the plantations, the Yu were forced into close quarters with the Fon and Congolese. The Yu and Fon shared deep linguistic and spiritual roots, which they synthesized into voodoo. The specific Yu spiritual concepts, such as the Loa, spirits, and specific drumming rhythms, became the foundational architecture for the religion that would eventually unite the enslaved population. Between 1810 and 1860, Portuguese, Brazilian and American smugglers continued to operate illegally out of the Bight of Benin. Yu captives, along with Yoruba prisoners of war from the Yoruba civil wars, were smuggled in massive numbers to the coffee and sugar plantations of Bahia, Brazil, and Cuba. The transatlantic enslavement of the Yu officially ends not with freedom, but with European colonization. During the scramble for Africa, the German Empire signs treaties with coastal chiefs and establishes Togoland, completely absorbing the traditional Yu territories into the German colonial empire. Following World War I, this territory was violently split between the British and French, which is why the Awe people today are divided by the modern borders of Ghana and Togo. In 1809, nearly 10,000 refugees from Saint-Domingue, Haiti, including free people of color and enslaved Africans, arrived in New Orleans, Louisiana. The enslaved Fon and Awe people brought their complex Vodun theology with them. In Louisiana, it synchronized with Catholicism and local Native American herbalism to become Louisiana Voodoo, a direct theological descendant of the Bight of Benin.
Alabama plantation owner and shipbuilder named Timothy Maher made a $100,000 bet that he could successfully smuggle a ship of Africans past federal authorities. Maher funded a schooner called the Clotilda, captained by William Foster. Foster sailed directly to the port of Ouidah, controlled by the Fon Kingdom of Dahomey. King Glele of Dahomey had just raided several Yoruba towns, and Foster purchased 110 captured Yoruba men, women, and children.
The Clotilda sneaked into the Mobile Bay in Alabama under the cover of night in July 1860. The captives were hidden in the swamps, and Foster burned the ship to destroy the evidence. The wreck was finally discovered in 2019. They were enslaved for exactly 5 years before the end of the Civil War in 1865. Because they had just arrived, they were not culturally Americanized. They still spoke fluent Yoruba, understood their ancient laws, and knew exactly who they were. When emancipation came, they asked Timothy Maher to pay for their passage back to West Africa. When he refused, they pooled their meager wages, bought a plot of land from him, and built an independent, self-governing sovereign community just north of Mobile, Alabama, called Africatown. Do you belong to the Awe people of Togo and Ghana? The Awe people are part of the broader GBE-speaking ethno-linguistic group. They are most closely related to the Fon, Asia, Mina, Yoruba, Akan, and Igbo peoples. If you do, that means that you too share DNA with a people who were the decentralized cultural engineers of the Bight of Benin, renowned for their advanced textile artistry and fierce independence. Although heavily targeted during the transatlantic slave trade, their profound spiritual science survived the Middle Passage. This resilient theology co-founded the Vodun religion, which ultimately served as the unifying blueprint that ignited the Haitian Revolution.